Welcome to the first lesson in TandemFlow's AI Developer course. Thank you so much for buying this course and for trusting us. This is going to be the best place to learn these techniques. We're going to be moving fast in this course. Make sure that you take time to digest all the concepts that we talk about. We'll be showing you practical ways to use LLMs and AI to expedite the amount of code that you can produce and the quality of code that you can produce. Let's jump in right away here and just get our environment set up. So we're going to be using Aider as our coding assistant here. There's a couple things we need to do before we actually get set up and get Aider running. First and foremost, you're going to need an IDE. We can head over to the Visual Studio website and you can just download whatever platform you're using. Download VS Code. That's what I'll be using. If you have a different IDE you like to use, that's totally fine as well. So go ahead, get VS Code set up. There's great instructions here on this site. Once you have that set up and good to go, we're going to need to go ahead and download Python. So you can just head over to python.org/downloads, just like this. And you can download the latest version for your OS right here. So I'll be using Python 3.12 for this course, but you should be able to use any of these latest versions. Next, we're going to need to install pip. So pip is a package manager for Python. This is how we're going to be installing Aider and some other tools throughout this course. So you can head over to the pip website, just like so. And all of these links will, of course, be down in the README of this project. So right here, we have a command for each of the different OSs. You can just copy this over. I'm in VS Code now, and I can jump over. I'm using Python 3, so Python 3-m ensure pip, and then this upgrade flag. And that'll go ahead, and if you don't already have pip installed, this will install pip. Otherwise, I already have it here, so we can make sure that that's actually installed on my computer. Finally, we'll need to install Aider. So to install Aider, we just go to aider.chat, and we can see here the installation process is pretty simple. Once you have Python and pip installed, you just are going to pip install Aider install. So I'll head back over into my terminal and do that. We can see here, I already have Aider installed, which is great. Now you can run this Aider install command, and that'll go ahead and install Aider. Super easy. Now, the last thing we need to do is set up our API keys for our LLM provider. Throughout this course, I'll be using Sonnet, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, as well as OpenAI's O1 preview. However, if you head over to the Aider website, we can head down to this LLM leaderboards, and we can see models such as DeepSeek are being used, and this is the top placing model right now. DeepSeek R1 is a super powerful model. They're having some troubles right now with their API, so we're not going to be using them for this course. However, I would highly recommend looking into these tools, doing your research, understanding the risks of using models like DeepSeek, and going ahead and getting whatever API key that you need set up. Aider makes it really easy here on this website. They have this connecting to LLMs page where you can go through, and there are detailed instructions on how to set up each API key. So like I said, I'll be using Anthropic and OpenAI. I would recommend DeepSeek as well if you're trying to save money. But for the purposes of this course, I have set up Anthropic and OpenAI. So there is this .env.template file right here. And what you're going to do is copy this file, rename it to just .env, and then paste in your OpenAI key, your Anthropic key, or your DeepSeek key, or all three if you want. So once you have your LLM set up, we can head into our code editor. So here in VS Code, and we can actually get Aider up and running. So like I said, I'll be using Anthropic for this. So the command that I'm going to run to start up Aider is Aider, and then add this model flag right here. And then I will be using Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Aider is set up to recognize that model as just Sonnet, but if you are using something like DeepSeek, you can use DeepSeek Chat or just do R1, just like that. I will be using Sonnet, so we can go ahead, send that command off. Aider is going to prompt us with, there is no GitHub repo found. Do we want to create one? Yes, we do. Aider uses Git to track its changes and update the code base, so it's super important that you have a GitHub repo going for Aider's actual chats. And now that we have Aider up and running, we can see it created a few different files here. So we have this .gitignore. Everything in this file will be ignored by both Git and Aider. So you can see my .env file is here. That means when I push this to GitHub, it won't be pushing my API keys to the cloud. It's super important that your API keys stay secure and you don't share those with anybody. So make sure that your .env file is here in the gitignore. Aider does this automatically, but it's always nice to double check. And then there's also this .aider, and then this glob pattern is what this is called. So every file that starts with .aider will be ignored by both Aider and Git. So super important. Like I said, Aider will set this up automatically. So once you have that good to go, you can see we also have some other files that Aider made automatically, the chat history and the input history. These are files that we won't really be looking at. You can dig deeper into each of these. It's basically just a raw log of every conversation you've had in this project with Aider. So you can see mine's super fresh, but Aider needs these files just to operate normally. So just know that these are supposed to be here and you don't need to touch these really. So super quickly, I want to talk about why we're using Aider for this course. Aider is, I believe, the best AI coding assistant out there right now. It has the ability to directly edit files within your project and has all sorts of features and configurations that other AI coding assistants don't have access to. So we're going to dig deep into Aider throughout this course, but I do want to make it very clear that the principles that we're going to be learning, the concepts around AI development, around AI coding, those apply to every tool that you want to use. So if you're using something like Cursor or Bolt.new, something like that, you're welcome to use those. And the principles you learn here in this course will carry over into those other editors. However, like I said, Aider is a great tool. You can use it anywhere on your computer in the command line. It's super powerful. And so that's what we're going to be using for this entire course. So now that we have Aider up and running, we can actually go ahead and super quickly just send Aider a prompt to see how it actually works. So I'm going to give it the same prompt that is on the Aider website. So generate a snake game in Python. And this initial prompt here is just going to be sent right to Aider, and this will edit code. So we can go ahead, run this command. We can see Aider gets to work here. This is a new file that it's creating. And Aider uses Git for all of these changes. You can dig more into what that looks like, but just understand these search and replace blocks are something that Git uses. So like I said, it's super important that you have Git installed as well as Aider. We will go ahead and create this new file. Aider is also prompting us here if we want to run this shell command to install Pygame. We can go ahead and say yes to this because the file it just created requires this Pygame package, which again, we're using pip for our package installer. So we can run that. We can see I already have Pygame installed, so that's no problem. It's asking us here if we want to add this command output to the chat. I'm going to say no, just because this won't help Aider in any major fashion. So hit no. And then finally, it's going to ask us if we want to run the program here. So this is the command to run the snake game. We'll go ahead and say yes. And there we go. We have this very simple Python snake game fully generated by Aider. And this is looking super good. So I'll close out of this, head back over to my code editor. So back in the code editor, here I can use the command Control-L, and that'll clear up my terminal. I'll use this a ton just to keep my workspace clean throughout the course. So just so you understand, that is Control-L I use to clear out the terminal there. So it's important to mention that the tools and techniques that we're using in this course are the most up-to-date right now. However, this industry moves quickly, and so things are bound to change rapidly. Just understand that using these tools, such as Aider, these LLMs, the highest quality models, is going to put you significantly ahead of everyone else. So we will get into some very, very practical use cases for Aider and these coding principles throughout this course. So make sure as we move on, as we start developing projects, that you are following along with the lessons and taking your time to really digest and understand what is happening at every step of the way. Thank you again for buying this course. We're super excited to have you here and to be teaching the cutting edge of software development right now. So again, make sure you have everything installed here. Make sure you have a simple little prompt here just to understand how Aider works, and we will see you in lesson 2.